This morning, I've invited Steve Aiello, who is a paramedic lecturer at Auckland University of Technology. I've worked with over a number of years on various projects, and we've explored virtual reality and mixed reality, enhanced biometrics in a number of different projects over the years. And Steve's going to give us a bit of an overview of his projects, what he's been up to, and what he plans to do next. So over to you, Steve.
No pressure, Tom. Thanks a lot. Hi guys. Yeah, thanks, Tom, for asking me to do this wee little talk. Just to go over some of my experience and development of ideas with the use of mobile and wearable technologies. Just a wee bit of background on me, I guess. My background is health, so I've been an intensive care paramedic, various names I think in Australasia, but I think they have MICAs or something similar in Australia. For some years worked in the UK as well as here in New Zealand. I've been at AUT for just over 5 years now, and have an interest in clinical simulation and student learning. And I think that's formed the basis of most of the projects that I've worked with Tom on, and my interest. So Tom's asked me to just give you guys an overview, as best as I can in 30 minutes, of 3 little projects that we've done, and sort of how we've developed those ideas, and where we're at today, I guess. So I'll go over those projects, and I'll try my best not to overrun in time, but feel free to give me a nudge if I do.
Sure. And you're okay with people asking questions if they?
Yeah. Go ask questions, or at the end, I'm happy just shout in there. I think personally, I like it when it's interactive and we can sort of bounce ideas around. Just about myself is I'm relatively new to the department here in paramedicine, with my extended background being clinical. But the advantage of coming into this role with a fresh pair of eyes has allowed me to not only learn the structure and the sort of pedagogical approach to how our program works, but also to push me to understand and question why and how we do what we do. So with that interest in clinical simulation, I started to look at some of the basic skills that we promote and expect our students to be able to understand. So today I'll try and give an idea of this journey and how we developed our learning. I'll see now if I can share a screen. I've done some sort of fancy slide thing for you. Can you see?
Yeah, it's working. Yeah.
It is?
Amazing.
Okay. Just been playing with this little Spark Adobe package. It's really nice. And it's quick and easy to start and develop. Okay. So enough about me, let's move forward. So this project, as we've started, is called Mesh 360, so Multiple Environment Simulation Hub 360 degrees. And the idea really is to put a mesh of technology into how we develop our student learning. And the first topic I want to talk about is one that we initially started, which evolved around scene safety. So historically, students would enter our clinical simulation rooms and ask if the scene is safe or are there any dangers. And this room that you see here is fairly representative of what we would give them. So there's not much influence around, and there's not much stimulus that they can work with. So it's been used for many years, and it really sort of challenged me because no risk, no influence, and offered nothing to clinical practice or clinical judgments. And so students would then face the quandary of how to approach the scene safety because of the limited information. So scene safety, well, really, what does it mean? I guess, in essence, we want our paramedic students to look for dangers. And that might be along the lines of approaching a fire scene. And I guess you guys in Australia have been through a lot of that recently and can probably appreciate the risks and benefits of having to approach something like this at the benefit of yourself or patients and that scene safety. It could be something like a car accident. And again, if I came to this scene, there's things I'm looking at here which will influence how I treat my patient. For example, if I look at this car in front of me, there's no airbags which have been deployed. In fact, it may not even have an airbag. The car looks that old. It also looks like the cabin where the driver was sitting has not been intruded. So the driver hasn't been squished into that driving position. But we do have lots of damage to the windscreen, as you can see from the bonnet. It's quite a major impact to the front of this car. So all of those things we're trying to develop into our questioning and our ability to understand the scene. Other things that we might be more fearful of would be, again, we've had things like this in New Zealand, which would be earthquake or weather-related instances. So here we may have power lines or trees that are about to fall, all manner of things. And of course, we've got the people who are aggressive, who are dangerous, who might be drug-induced and maybe having mental health issues. And a prime example.
This is not going well for you, Steve.
So we've got all of these factors which we're trying to give them, but in essence, we're only giving them a static environment which is the same all the way from their undergraduate program through to postgraduate education. So the question was prompted, the question, how do we provide a student with an authentic scene safety experience? Now, we decided that whilst my background is that of a clinician rather than a programmer or a technology expert, really within paramedicine, we have a bit of a reputation of getting things done or just giving it a go. So we bought an inexpensive, very easy to use LG 360 camera, which you can see here. And we started to have a play. Once we started to load some of these images, we found a software program called SeekBeak, and we loaded our images up to this free platform, and it's free to use, albeit as limited image upload. But it's a really easy, intuitive software program. So we started to develop 360 scenes that involve points of interest with hotspots for the student to explore and develop understanding of the complexities of what a scene might involve. And as I say, the software itself was again simple and intuitive to use, not only for me, but for the students. So we wanted to highlight as many issues via the hotspots as we could. And it was really important for us not to be contrived with the use of technology. We really wanted to try and offer a unique and authentic experience for the students to develop an understanding of a scene. So with this in mind, we utilized students and their mobile devices and provided them with the inexpensive VR headset or Google Cardboard initially. And we used these scenes to develop and encourage discussion and interpretation of that VR 360 experience. So there's a QR code there if you want to have a look at yourself later, but I'll just give you a quick example of what we showed them. Hopefully this works on your screens. Now, hang on. So this is one of the first scenes. Now it's not actually working at the moment, but we do have sound in this image, and it's the sound of this patient here on the ground who's moaning and groaning and calling out in distress. And a paramedic might enter this scene, and really what we want them to do is to start to evaluate the risks and some potential for mechanism of injury or points of interest which might be important to their treatment or management of this patient. Now, if we sort of take a step back from this, we can see that he's potentially fallen on the ground. He may have fallen off of this stool here. And of course, if we have a look up, we might be able to see what, if anything, he was working on. But importantly, we can also bring into the scene objects like a knife, which might pose a danger to that particular staff member as they approach the patient, and it might be something that they might want to either do a risk assessment or evaluation, whereby they leave the scene or they remove the knife quite early on. Again, looking around, we can look at this big sort of trailer thing. Is that going to fall on me? Is that a risk? Or we can look here. Now, again, the sound's not working, but this chainsaw that we have in the background is actually running and makes the noise that it's running. And then if we come onto this hot spot, we've got this strong smell of petrol, and we've got this spilt petrol just here. Well, the factors which are important for us as medics and scene safety would be things like access and egress. So questioning, if I do need to sort of quickly get away from this patient with the knife, how am I going to do it? Where's the best way to get out? Or, importantly, if I need to get this patient out on a trolley bed, let's say, then we can remove this garage door, we can lift the garage door, and we can move them out on quite easily. So the next stage to this is that we can offer the student the experience of getting closer to the patient to try and evaluate exactly what's wrong with them, if there's an issue that they need to address quite quickly. So we can offer this type of hotspots here and bring them closer to the patient.
Oh, please help me. Oh,
now, I'm not sure whether you can hear that or not. But the patient's talking to them now. That's the same patient that was on the ground. And he's telling them that he's got a chest infection of a recent diagnosis and he's on antibiotics. When we look around at the investigations that the paramedic might do, we get some additional information of the severity and risk that this patient is currently in. So temperature is low, blood pressure is low. We can do an ECG and bring that up, and we can see that it's a rapid, unstable rhythm, and his oxygen levels are low. We can also offer them the opportunity to see whether they would or feel that they need to actually start give this patient some treatment, whether that be some oxygen or ventilate them or call for backup and support by the radio. We've also got a link which will take them to their kit, which holds all their treatment options and pharmacology, so all the drugs that they might be able to give this this particular patient. So it offers them an opportunity to not only evaluate the scene, but get to that patient and make an overview of risk assessment of the patient's presentation, and offer them options as to what they could or should be doing next by way of treatment. One of the cool things about CPEAK, which we noticed, was we were able to record gaze from a heat map as to where the students looked from each of these scenes, and that gave us an understanding that they were looking in the right places, that they were using the 360-degree head camera in an appropriate way, so they weren't just task focused in one direction, they were actually reviewing the scene. And we were able to get some really nice stats and information from this, which was quite cool. Just as a follow-up to this, we then sort of provided our students with the 360-degree camera so that they could develop and reflect upon their own clinical scenes. And these scenes were then utilized by the wider student body to develop a wide range of environments for the students to investigate and to delve deeper into the scene safety and their environment. So like that's project one. Has anyone got any thoughts or questions as to how we do this, or am I happy to just wait till the end? I'm not fussed.
Just a comment. I just found the audio
disturbingly realistic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's actually me on the ground in the garage, in my garage, and that's me making that moaning and groaning. But what we noticed from this first sort of iteration, this first sort of trial with the virtual reality is when we put the sound into it, it gave not only a more of a realistic and authentic experience, but it started to give the crew greater stress and anxiety, which kind of leads us on to project 3, which I'll talk about later. But sound, as we developed these ideas, became integral into how we developed our simulation environments. So it was really cool, really important that we did that, and quite interesting, some of the feedback that we got from the students. And what I found is that the more the students had to play with these cameras and made their scenes, that they started to put more sounds in. And that could be not only people crying or asking questions or being aggressive in their presentation, but it could be cars and noise and buildings and noises from fire or equipment. And these all have a knock-on effect as to the performance with simulation. But I'll touch on that in a wee bit. Okay, so project 2 was something that we had sort of moved onto from our use with Seek Beacon and my time in the health school here at AUT. And I guess I want to ask you a question. Is that, how many of you actually knew or understood the implications and direction of your career choice when you first started your work life or academic journey? I know from my own personal experience, I still don't know what I want to do. So, as a younger man, I had all these ideas, and we developed different ideas as we progressed. But I don't feel I had all the information I wanted to actually make a solid decision. An example is this is Tom tells me he either wanted to be a penguinologist or a cloud counter. And I have no idea what either of those things are, but I'm guessing he went for his third choice, which was associate professor. Okay, so how well informed are we when we made that choice, and how good a choice was it? And this sort of brought me on to an idea. I read some articles on rhizomatic learning, which I'm sure you guys know, but for me it was new. It was kind of a light bulb moment, and I know that in education in New Zealand, there's a bit of movement on this idea. So rhizomatic learning for me acknowledges that we as learners come from different contexts, backgrounds, and that we need different things, and that really it can't be assumed as to what those things are. So we know learning's complex process, sense making, to which almost all of us brings their own context and their own needs. And in some aspects, it sort of overturns conventional notions of instructional pedagogy, and positing that really the community is the curriculum, and that learning is not designed around the content, but instead a social process in which we learn with and from each other. Now, I take that as a quote from somebody else, but it really struck home with me. And I thought, well, how can we develop this? Because I talked to my students, and they really, they seem still quite young and novice and don't really know what they want to do. And I understand that some of them went into nursing in their first semester, but then changed and jumped ship to podiatry. So this sort of prompted, well, what is it and how can we make this better at AUT? So currently at the university, we have 7 schools within the health school model within the Bachelor of Health Science programs. That whilst in the real world, healthcare professionals are asked to work together more often for better patient outcome. At undergraduate level, and when they're really learning their trade or their discipline, we don't really promote that interdisciplinary cross-pollination or interprofessional understanding. So we sort of did a bit of a talk around this, and we thought, well, we have a limited understanding of each other's clinical practice and culture, and different priorities, different language, different treatment emphasis, but yet, as I mentioned, we're all trying to achieve that same goal with a positive patient outcome. But really, for this to happen, we needed to provide a platform to promote a community of practice and understanding. So for those who are undertaking or thinking of undertaking undergraduate or postgraduate study, or those in their first semester, or those just really looking to understand. So an example would be, is really, I don't know the skill set of podiatry or occupational therapy, but in my role in the pre-hospital environment as a paramedic, there might be a realistic reason why I would refer a patient to those, because I know that they can deal with that skill. So really what I was trying to think of is, you know, can we provide an area which is more transdisciplinary, educational, and a community of learning? And so it prompted the question of, so, you know, what information might help assist the undergraduate decision, and what do healthcare professionals need to know about each other? So this led on again to VR headsets and 360-degree technology with the use of things like SeekBeak. So students were shown a 360-degree virtual environment that allowed them to explore other health disciplines. And this allows, the students to experience core competencies, environments via a centralized single hub. And this is more of a prototype of a virtual health hub that's being developed using SeekBeak again to create an inexpensive, bring your own device, immersive environment for health school students to explore, inform, and allow a greater level of understanding. So we did a health school environment, which I'll show you now. I had to play with this before. It's not doing what it should do, but I'll try and talk you through as to how it would be seen by the student. So again, there's a QR code if you wanted to. Oh, hang on. If you wanted to have a quick look-see in your own time. So here's the health school core hub, and we have podiatry, paramedicine, nursing, physio, midwifery, oral health, and occupational therapy. And the health school students can come into this environment and they can choose a discipline which they're actually interested in, or they don't know about, or they want more learning about. And I'll give you the example for paramedicine just for now. So we can link into paramedicine or nursing or any of the other environments, and we can start to explore. Now, unfortunately, this is not working, so I'm going to just take you through some of the rooms that we've developed, and they in essence, they link into each other. We can bring you into a room which shows you, or is titled, What is Paramedicine? So in other words, what do we do? I can link them to videos of paramedic simulation training, intubation skills with videos, demonstrations of intubations, chest decompressions. So all the core competencies that you might well expect your paramedic to be able to perform, with videos which will inform the students as to what we do. We can move around this environment, and we can delve slightly deeper into things which like our pharmacology. So in paramedicine, we might use amiodarone, and we'll use amiodarone in this way. We'll give the indications, the contraindications, and all of the important information in order to be able to safely administer that drug. And this is not only a kind of a really neat way for students outside of the paramedic discipline to be able to investigate what paramedicine does, but it's also a really nice way that the paramedic students can go in and revise what they can give and how they give it safely. So we can evaluate the, the chemical structure of metoclopramide. We can start to look at its mode of action and break it down into a wider knowledge and be more informative to our students. We can also go into, let's see what we've got. We can go back and come into nursing and develop a similar set of environments that we can, as novice to a nursing environment, I can come in and see really what they do, so that we start to develop a more developed culture within the health school and knowing exactly what each of us actually do. So that was kind of the health school product that we sort of developed using SeekBeak. And we've had some really interesting feedback from this. It's something which we as a school are really trying to push. There's a real big push in our departments to have this cross-disciplinary understanding and collegial conversations and discussion between various students and types of students. But I think there is actually for potential in the future that there's talk at the moment in a transdisciplinary sort of setting that we may even have a basic health school undergraduate qualification, which all students, whether you're nursing, podiatry, paramedicine, or any of them, will all meet the same core competencies. But then you can, it's almost like a pick and mix. You can take some of the resuscitation from paramedicine. You can take some of the physio and balance assessment skills from physio. And you add all of these points up to make an overall qualification and degree, which the government and the health bodies here in New Zealand think might be the future in order to fill in skill gaps within the health structure. So it's quite interesting, quite an interesting project. And I'm not really sure where it's going to go just yet, but I think it's something which may have a future by way of our students learning and a transdisciplinary approach. Okay, so that's project 3, and I'm desperately trying my best to keep in with the time. I'm not doing very well, but we'll give it a go. Project 3 was more, we developed in regards to situational awareness and elements of stress. So this includes several areas of interest for us where we were able to use a BYO device and wearable technologies to provide an authentic clinical simulation experience with our students. And we had this because of several interests. So historically, it's assumed that once we've assessed the scene for hazards within a simulation environment, that the student is now safe. However, this is really far from the truth, especially when at the scene of an evolving or dynamic event, and it can quickly change even with the best scene control measures. So the environment of the paramedic can be unpredictable, uncertain, and in some respects unforgiving. So it's for this reason that the concept of scene safety that I discussed in project 1 is good. But however, we really can't afford to lower the awareness of the scene with just one single evaluation. And we wanted to move towards a culture of situational awareness where we understand that the scenes are alive and evolving, and we wanted to ask our students to actually decide for themselves if it was appropriate to approach. And we wanted the learning from the scene to change or evolve throughout the scenario, and requiring them to recognize the change and take appropriate actions. So essentially, where scene safety leaves off, situational awareness picks up. So situational awareness really requires you to be aware of your surroundings 360 degrees and 100% of the time. Now, unfortunately, we had difficulty in replicating this in class environments. So this was, sort of problem 1 of our development. The second area of interest was stress. and authentic experience. So clinical simulation has become really widespread in training and assessment tools across a range of health professionals, including emergency care. As with any form of assessment, simulations are associated with stress and may have a negative effect on students' experience if demands required for the simulation sort of outweigh their ability. So we kind of thought about these processes, and so we developed an approach to offer an alternative experience whereby we could investigate these interests. And we did this by the use of an Apple Watch, and we used an Apple Watch initially to record heart rate. We did have a collaboration with a team in Chile, and they had additional sensors, which I'll talk about later, albeit they failed. So we went back to kind of old school, and we had the Apple Watch. And what we decided to do is we put this on and record heart rate throughout this process. And the process was that we gave the student an experience of a virtual reality helicopter journey towards an injured patient. We landed the helicopter, and once the helicopter had landed, the student was then taken forward towards the patient, and then the virtual reality headset was then removed within the simulation room. I apologize about the picture, it's terrible, but this let them into then this immersive simulation environment or room to assess the effect of the participation of the students in the emergency care of that simulation and treat that patient, whilst trying to record their heart rate. And we wanted to do this in a simulation room. We do this with the standard high fidelity mannequins, which are pretty cool. You know, they can talk and wink and blink, interact with breathing. They open their mouth. They have heart sounds. They're incredibly sort of fancy, technology driven, but really the required hands-on skills that are required, those fine motor skills required for patient care, we couldn't replicate with the current sort of haptic technology in regards to a virtual reality environment. So we thought, well, the next best thing is to put them in the environment. Now, this is a terrible picture, but we can change the environment by way of projectors to put them into the scene, which in this instance was a person who had fallen from a tree. What we then did is we recorded by video the objective measure of stress, which is heart rate via the watch, and a subject measure of experience by interview thereafter. And this is a short video of the helicopter experience and the how we set this up with the students, followed by a brief interview of their experience. And you can see down below also how their heart rate we gave a baseline heart rate just to ensure that they were calm and relaxed. And once we started the VR experience, we can see here the heart rate starts to elevate and then starts to reduce a little bit and then elevate again here when we came to the simulation. And interestingly enough, when it came to the interview, their heart rate increased again. So I'll play this video. Hopefully the sound works for you guys. It's 4 minutes, I think.
Real time of 4 or 5 minutes, 45 minutes. ETA to scene approximately 15:15.
The image you see on the right is what the student sees, and you can see in the background on the TV the current heart rate.
Control with Trek Rescue 2. Now we're born from Ardmore to Conroe, 5 POB, ETA 2 minutes. And start time of 12:05. Check.
The image on the right is the student's view. This is a real landscape below. They're flying actually to my house
You are being dispatched
use
to
from
a
Google
50-year-old
Maps.
male, rural location who has fallen.
Students strapped in like they would be on a helicopter.
Terrain, terrain. Too low, terrain. Terrain, terrain.
Well, now I can see. There's the patient in the background and a tree. Move then toward the patient. See an angulated leg and a chainsaw still running. But note that she keeps looking up at the height of the tree, the position of the ladders. Access and egress issues. We now remove the VR headset and put them in the simulation. Sorry about the moaning.
Great, well, thank you for doing the simulation for us, and we're just after a little bit of feedback. We've got 3 simple questions. The first question, what was the impact of the 360 experience on the quality of your clinical simulation learning?
I think it was better because I could visualise the patient before I had to treat them, which is what would happen normally. You would arrive at scene, you can see the scene and you can picture what's around you. And I immediately could see what had happened to the patient, whereas normally I'd have to ask all of those questions when I go to the simulation.
And you're a paramedic lecturer, so you've got a fair bit of experience in simulations. Just wondering what you think are the key differences between the 360 VR environment and the traditional classroom environment?
I think it's more realistic, so I think it better prepares the student for the experience, and I think it can take some of the awkwardness out of the simulation because you're already in the zone, if you know what I mean. And I think too, in going to out on the road, then you're actually better prepared for that because you've seen some images to prepare your mind for what you could experience.
And last question, based on your experience on the project, would you like to see more VR and training?
Definitely, yes.
Cool. Do you think you might be able to build it into your practice somehow?
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, again, there's a wee link there. And so, where next? I'm quite interested in sort of biometrics, cortisol release and stress in regards to simulation. But the future, it would be really quite interesting to look at whether virtual reality environments can promote resilience for simulation and treatment of those patients who are critically unwell, and offering them an authentic and realistic experience. I think there's multitude of angles and areas that we can look at here, and really, I still feel like we're developing the ideas as we move forward. So hopefully I haven't taken up too much of your time. I'm going to just remove this from the screen now if I can. And if you've got questions, then fire away. Let's see.
Yeah, so you just click the stop sharing.
Stop sharing.
Cool. Well, thanks, Steve. That's great. And you've kind of really just overviewed what, sort of about 4 years of projects, but that was great. Enjoyed that. So let's throw it open to questions, feedback, etc. I think one of the key things is Steve is looking at doing a PhD in this kind of context, in this domain, and so it's the next step is figuring out an actual research question that he wants to take forward over over a PhD.
Stephen, the presentation is fantastic, and the value here I think is almost self-evident. How hard was it for you, this is sort of a silly question, but how hard was it for you to actually recruit everybody to make the resources in the first place?
It's not actually, it's a great question. I think in the early stages for the sort of, say, the project 1 and 2, equipment-wise was cheap and easy to find. When you say resources, we've got most of the physical resources for simulation. Students and participants was super easy. There's one thing which we're quite proud of in our department is that we've got our students are superbly motivated, always happy to help, and from that point of view, it was easy. We have them knocking on our door to take part in research, which is quite exciting for us, and quite exciting for them, and for something novel and different like these projects are. Again, interest is heightened. Yeah, it was pretty straightforward.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. No, that was all very, very cool. Also, you needed to be a bit creative and find somebody with a messy garage and all these sorts of things.
That was easy because that was Steve's.
Well, thanks,
Steve, sorry, thanks very much for that. I'm actually 15 minutes overdue for another meeting, but that was really great to see, and look forward to seeing more work from you in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks for your time, Charles.
So Steve, it's Lisa here.
Hi, Lisa.
How many students did you get to do that trial with the AR/VR, and were there some students that really didn't like it?
Yeah, so the third project that we did, we found, it was actually quite interesting. We found that probably about 2 out of 30 students were slightly disorientated because first use of VR headsets. We found some we found some really quite interesting reactions from some of the students as well. Some of the students, without prompt, were interacting with the video, which we hadn't anticipated. We got, as I say, about 30 students thereabouts to come through from all different qualification levels and various experience levels. But from a point of view of issues, it was minimal. Yeah.
Yeah, so we did do a comparison to first, second, third year students, and we had about 5 or 6 professional paramedics as well, including lecturers. Yeah,
it's probably actually more than that. We had first years, second year, third years, postgraduates, and qualified and experienced road staff, as well as experienced helicopter medics. So we had quite a range, which was quite cool.
It was really interesting to see the differences between the different levels of experience and their feedback on the VR experience. We did have one first year student who just broke out into a cold sweat as soon as she put the headset on, didn't she?
Yeah. I also noticed, just going back to Lisa's question, that we had some of the experienced medics who would do a stress relieving technique called box breathing, which is a kind of a yoga type circular breathing technique, which a lot of crews and guys do when they know that they're going to a job which has potential for being quite severe, in order to reduce stress levels, bring heart rate down. So we noticed, again, anecdotally, that some of the students were doing this technique as well, which again is something that we weren't expecting. Other things that we noticed that we did not expect were when we put them into the simulation room with the projected images of the scene on the wall, we noticed that at regular intervals, the students would pause with their treatment of the patient and keep looking up towards their environment, to the scene, to quantify and clarify just the mechanism of injury, so that they could answer the question, answer the patient's questions as to what had happened. So it was really powerful to see this, to see the participants reviewing the scene in order to facilitate their answers and their treatment. Really cool.
So it effectively created a feedback loop, didn't it?
Yeah.
For the experience.
That's exactly what. I'm sorry, I saw Tom raise his hand. I'm going to be. I'm excited about that point, because that's something that excites me, is the idea of the feedback potential for what you're doing. It's great that you're receiving feedback from the participants who are helping you to adjust, but I'm thinking further down the line, as you begin to work with this as part of the curriculum, when, where, and how do the feedback opportunities occur? Because as I'm thinking about that idea of it's informed by rhizomatic learning, the branching possibilities are very much in play in that fluid situation, aren't they? And so hypothetically, if you waited until after the simulation for any feedback, it would not be as authentic as those moment by moment points. But at the same time, how would you want to offer feedback moment by moment that didn't divert people away from the authenticity of the experience? Yeah. So I think it's a bit of a sticky problem, but potentially an exciting one.
Yeah, look, I think that's a great point, and it's something which we have thought about, and of course there will be some scenes that we'll put the crew into, whereby really all they need to do is get the patient, put them on a bed, and get them out of there, because it's dangerous. There might be even some instances where we get them actually not to treat the patient, but to evacuate and leave instantly. Or if there's a fire that is moving toward them, but it's 200 meters away, and it gets closer and closer and closer, then ascertaining the risk of that environment and the timing of when they move is something that they're going to have to factor in. Currently, the way we do simulation in our department is we give them a series of information verbally. So we'll say to them, there's a fire in the corner, there's a man holding a knife. We'll give them verbal clues, but once the simulation starts, they tend to forget those clues. And what we want to do is we want them to still be in front of them. We want them to still be a factor into their thinking and their process as to what they do next and how they treat. So what we know is that ordinarily we would give them a scenario with those verbal clues. And then as part of standard simulation practice, we would let them treat the patient. And then we would come to a group discussion. We have a group of peers, their students, the fellow students, almost in a circle where we all stand around and the crew reflect on their performance of what they could have done, should have done, or maybe other aspects that they'd forgotten. And it's an incredible tool. It's very powerful in their honesty and how they provide their feedback. And then the circle comes round where their peers offer comments about what they've seen from their performance. And then essentially, me as the lecturer, I just fill in the gaps at the end. Now, I think a process like that might still fit by way of the feedback of the scene if they've forgotten the man in the corner with the knife or the fire which is quickly approaching. And that's part of the discussion afterwards, just as it's part of the clinical evaluation and treatment of the patient.
Yeah, so I guess part of the key is trying to develop on a shoestring a virtual environment like that has non-linear feedback elements built into it. And so we've brainstormed that quite a bit, but it just comes down to time and money in a lot of ways, rather than just being a linear experience.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, with the 3D goggles, perhaps going beyond the cardboard variety, and some other low-cost equipment, how much of this sort of training would it be feasible for the student to do remotely in their own home, with you monitoring them via a video link and so forth, and how much might be done with fairly low-cost equipment near where the student is, so they don't have to go a long way to a institution or hospital.
Yeah, and that kind of fits in with the first project, and was one of the ideas behind it. We've got probably in our program, maybe 30% of distance students. And so how do we offer them a similar or authentic experience of a scene? We do have a problem in regards to the high fidelity mannequins. We simply can't get that, around the country. And that's an issue for us. And I don't know the answer, because the majority of the skill is the tactile feel, touch, administration, touch of the patient, of the mannequin. But if we can put that to the side and review that first project, we can get them as a distance student to use their own mobile device, whether they use a Google Cardboard or a $20 plastic headset. We can provide them with an environment similar to the first one, for them to be able to review, analyze, reflect, and they could write up something as to what they felt was important within that environment. So they still offers them elements of learning. We can then also get them a 360-degree camera, which is not a big issue. It's very small. It's only 4 or 5 inches long. We could post that to them for them to be able to develop and make their own 360 environments, for them to share with their peers, with the other people within their year or their semester or group. And again, offer points of interest and reflection as to how those scenes would influence their practice or approach to a scene with regards to safety. So I think it's highly mobile, and that was one of the factors why we thought, whilst maybe not the highest tech, a mobile device, most people have. We did a survey. In fact, all our students, when we did the survey, had a mobile device of sorts. And a package such as something like SeekBeak is cross-platform, it's free, and it's easy to use. So it made it accessible, regardless of who you are. And that brings it back to me. I'm not tech-orientated, but we were able to develop most of these things on our own without support from other departments, with the exception of some of those helicopter scenes. So it's highly mobile, great for distance, and that was one of the big pushes that we wanted to influence if we could.
Good question. Well, we're kind of running out of time, and people are starting to have to move off to other meetings. But thank you very much, Steve.
Yeah.
That was really good. Enjoyed that.
Thanks, Steve. That was great.
Thank you so much.
Some good suggestions in the chat there for you, Steve. So
yeah,
you can save the chat. And we'll save this video as well and archive it, so you'll be able to come back to it and have a look at it, and people who weren't here can watch it as well. So thank you, everyone. Good to see you all. We'll catch you all next week, where we're going to pick the brains of one of the key people around pedagogy, which is Fred Garnett from the UK. And he's just published a new book with Nigel Ecclesfield. That should be a really interesting session as well. So we'll see you all then.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tom.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Steve.
Bye.